Hello my dear students of class 11th. Today we are going to begin with the first chapter of Hornbill. The first chapter is The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. Now as you all know that Khushwant Singh is a very prominent writer. He is an editor, also has written many books, and here this particular chapter deals with his personal relations with his grandmother. Okay, he was deeply impressed by the personality of his grandmother, who was an old lady, and the very first chapter for this, just to make them understand the importance of the people who are old, particularly our grandparents who live along with us. Many a times we don't realize how important they are for us, but here Khushwant Singh, he brings out the concept very clearly. It reflects his love towards his grandmother. That is one point. The second thing is, there is a comparison between the life of city and the life of villages. Okay, in earlier days, Khushwant Singh was living with his grandmother in his village because his parents were there in the city, busy working, and he had to be with his grandmother. So, the first half of the chapter speaks about how he spent his days along with his grandmother in the village. Then, when the grandmother was brought to the city, the changes that brought about in their lifestyle, the changes that brought about in the thoughts, all have been reflected quite very nicely. Okay, so let's begin. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest, and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He looked if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child that seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. Now, see this very first paragraph, he makes clear that he loved his grandmother more than his grandfather. Okay, because he had never seen his grandfather, he has seen only his portrait hanging on the wall, and according to him, his grandfather was too old, yes, to have a sort of children or so on, and he was so old that according to Khushwant Singh, he could have only grandchildren. Okay. Now, about his grandmother, when he speaks, all the love, care and concern, yes, comes deep into his heart. The statement made by him, okay, as for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. Now, here this statement has been used something like that of a pun. It has two meanings. The thought was almost revolting means from a very long time he has seen his grandmother old and for him to think that she could have been young someday and beautiful, it was a revolting thought. There is another concept that comes into it, and that means at this age, if she was so beautiful, yes, then how beautiful she could have been when she was young. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known to her, old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older. Now, this is what I told you just now, that as he has seen her only in her old age, he could not think of her being young and being more pretty, and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. Now, see here how beautifully he has described the two terms pretty and beautiful. Pretty means something cute, and beautiful obviously upholds and brings the beauty that lies in a person. Beauty means beauty of character as well as appearance. Okay. Now, here according to Khushwant Singh, she may not be pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Now, here hobble means to walk about, okay, like old people walk about, okay, limping. Yes, as she was old, she used to keep one of her hand, yes, on her back, and in the other hand she was always having a rosary. Okay, rosary is a small what you say, traditional religious a small garland sort, in which there are beads, and when people, old aged people, they take the name of God, no, they keep on moving that, counting that. So, telling the beads here, tell, the word tell in English has two meanings. Tell means to say something, okay, and here when you are speaking to God, you are telling, okay, that concept is also there. And tell means here to move also, moving the beads of the rosary. Yes. So, tell means to speak, tell means to hear, it is to move, and the literal meaning is that she always used to be in communication with God. Okay. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. She was, yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. Okay, according to Khushwant Singh, nobody could have been more beautiful than his grandmother. Yes, he has said that because of her white hair, because of the white sari she used to wear, because of the peaceful appearance she had on her face, okay, he has compared her to pure white serenity, okay, serene, pure, just like the white solid ice of the mountains, or you can say snow capped peaks. Okay, the peaceful personality of the grandmother has been well explained here. My grandmother and I were good friends. Now, here you see the bond. Yes, it was not that he had no respect for grandmother, but they were more like friends. Okay. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her prayers in a monotonous sing song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice, but never bothered to learn it. Now, you can see here this particular feeling is that when the grandmother, she used to wake him up or bathe him, she used to sing the prayer. And what is the motive? that when he will hear it continuously, obviously he will also repeat it. So, the religious concept was to be brought about in him, but see the attitude of the author, he makes it very clear that he liked the prayer, yes, more because he used to listen to it in the voice of his grandmother, but he never bothered to learn it or to by heart it. Okay. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, and a tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. Now, here a very beautiful description. I don't know whether you people have ever experienced such a thing being in a village, or because nowadays, no, when you talk about the paraphernalias of education, that is quite different from what has been mentioned here. Okay, earlier, no, just one slate, one pencil or a pen that could be dipped in the ink and written, and it was all tied up together, and such a simple life was there. Yes, most probably not so typical, no, as you see to nowadays, even in LKG, if the student has to go to school, okay, a lot of copies are there, books are there, heavy bags are there, so many things are there which they have to carry, and so on. In earlier days, simple things, okay, one slate, maybe one pen. So, that simplicity of life in the village, okay, has been brought out quite very beautifully. And the breakfast, it was not what you say, bread, butter, or the breakfast that generally children prefer nowadays. Yes, stale chapati, a chapati cooked a day before, yes, with some butter and sugar, and the very same chapatis or the rest of the chapatis were carried by her to the village school. Now, she personally used to go along with him, yes, and those chapatis were given to the street dogs. Okay. Now, you can see this, personally she used to go with him to the school, which was near to a temple, and she used to spend all her time there in the temple, and then she used to get back with him. Okay, means no buses or no vehicles or no rickshaws as we have today. So nowadays children, they are quite in a comfort zone, yes, but in those days, yes, people had to walk on foot, yes, and reach to the places. Now, see, my grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer, while the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, okay, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. Now, see, he has given a pen picture. This, okay, to provide a pen portrait is not an easy thing, but you can see the writing style of Khushwant Singh here. Okay, a small boy with his grandmother returning. Okay, see his observation. Yes, the dogs that were there when the chapatis were put on. Yes, he used to watch them fighting for those chapatis, and then the grandmother used to walk along, and they used to return to the home. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. Okay, that was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go in an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. Now, here you can see, up till now whatever we have studied was about village life, a simple life, getting up early in the morning, bathing, yes, eating, taking a small breakfast, maybe chapatis with butter and sugar, walking to the school, uh, then returning back. Now, when the author came to the city to live with his parents, then things were very different. English medium school, bus to pick up. So, grandmother did not used to go along with him. She most probably even did not wake him up as she used to do it early. Yes, and there were no street dogs. Now, grandmother had a habit of feeding animals. Now, when there were no street dogs, obviously she switched over to feeding to sparrows instead of dogs. So, it was a turning point. Turning point means things became different. Okay, things became different from the manner or the way in which they used to live in the village. Okay, now see, but here his love has not reduced. Okay, this is very important. The things, the place has changed, but not the affection for his grandmother. Okay, as the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. Now, obviously, he used to go to school. Yes, there was no time sitting together, maybe talking, maybe conversing. Now, this is most probably a highlight of the manner in which the children of nowadays are being brought up. Okay, very less time to communicate either with parents, maybe with grandparents. Okay, more busy with the schedule, with the syllabus and so on. Okay. For some time she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. Now, you can see this. Okay, earlier in village school, religious things, scriptures, tradition, custom, culture, and from that now the author has switched over to science, yes, more of realistic things and the things about gravity, maybe about Archimedes' principle and so on. So, when he came and told all these things to his grandmother, she was not happy. She was not happy not because he was not studying well, she was not happy because according to her, religious things should have been taught. According to her, traditional things have been taught to the students rather than science and all these things. Now, this was her personal opinion. Okay, she could not help me with my lessons. Now, this was also one of the reasons, because she had not studied those things, she could not help him with those things. Okay. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. Okay, being a religious lady, she gave a lot of importance to religious scriptures. Okay. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. Now, she was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for general folk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. Now, here you can see the old people, they have their own old orthodox ideas. Okay, sometimes it is not easy for them to upgrade themselves according to the changing situation. Here also grandmother thought that music had lewd associations and it is not meant for gentle folk, it is meant only for harlots and beggars. Now, this was again her personal opinion. Yes, nowadays you can see extracurricular activities, maybe music, art or any sort of talent if the child is having, okay, it has to be promoted, it has to be brought up. So, that is why yes, sports, music activities, other co-curricular activities, all these things are given. Earlier education meant most probably bookish knowledge only. So, grandmother also had the same idea. Now, new things were there and she could not approve of it. Now, here one thing you should notice, that although she did not approve to them, but she never revolted against it. Okay, she never said that no, you should not learn it, okay, or my grandson should not be taught like this, nothing like that. She let the child learn the new things and so on, but she could never personally approve of it. Okay. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. Now, this common link of friendship means earlier they were living in the same room. Now, when he grew up, when he started going to degree college, okay, their rooms were also separated. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. Now, accepted her seclusion with resignation. Resignation means willingness. Seclusion, separation. Okay, now this separation also very willingly she accepted. Okay, she could understand as to why that was done. She could understand that there was a need of the hour, that was a need of the time, and it has to be done. Okay, she rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. Now, spinning wheel nowadays you may not have seen it, something like that of the charkha of that Gandhiji, okay, continuously spinning and preparing thread. So, that was the way of her to time pass, spinning the wheel. Okay, three things she did. One was spinning the wheel, second one was the continuous prayer, okay, even while spinning the wheel she continuously prayed, and the third thing was feeding sparrows. Now, that was her time schedule. Okay, that was the schedule she has prepared for herself. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrups. Veritable bedlam of chirrups means various sorts of noise. Now, here also you can say, generally if you go near the birds, they fly away. Yes, but when grandmother used to go, yes, they used to come and sit all around her, on her head, on her shoulder, and so on. Now, you can see this, okay, the relation she had developed, okay, with those birds, yes, was far more deep than most probably could be explained in the words. Okay, some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She simply smiled, but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. Now, for half an hour continuously she used to be with these birds, feeding them, sitting along with them, maybe conversing with them, and a very loving bond, yes, was there between her and the birds, okay, and they also felt quite comfortable with her. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age one could never tell. Now, see once again the use of the word tell. Here to tell means to say, or one could never tell means what may happen to her, because she was extremely aged and the author was going away for 5 years. Now, when he may return back, whether he will be able to see his grandmother or not. So, he thought that his grandmother may be very emotional, she may cry, but in the chapter we will see that nothing like that happens. Okay, she was very stern. She went to the railway station and she said goodbye to him, and obviously nothing as expected by the author happened. Even after 5 years, when he returned back, he found his grandmother standing there on the railway platform to greet him. Okay. But my grandmother could, okay, she was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprints as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. Now, here you can see this line. Okay, when she kisses him, he thinks that perhaps this is the last contact and most probably he will never be able to see her again. But that was not the way it happened. Okay, but that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. Now you can see the affection. Now this is what beauty is. Yes, because beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. For the author, his grandmother remained at the same age even after 5 years. Okay, no change in her. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with the sparrows, okay, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. Frivolous rebukes means to scold lovingly. Okay, yes, although after 5 years the grandson had come, but you can see, okay, the aged people, they have a fixed timetable, and even on that very same day she sat with the birds, she fed them, and that frivolous rebukes, okay, scolding the birds lovingly. Now whom can you scold? The people whom you love, or you can communicate, and here the communication is with birds. So this once again shows the loving bond, okay, which she had with the birds. In the evening a change came over her. Okay, she did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an and old drum, and started to sing. For several hours she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. Now this sang of the homecoming of warriors means in Punjab and other places there is a traditional method of welcoming people when they come from abroad. Okay, so that dholak and all that, the women, they sit in groups and sing, yes, praising songs, yes, as if some warrior has returned from the war place. So in that very same manner, but she was very aged, yes, and people like grandparents of the author said her not to strain herself, but she did not listen. Now for the first time in her life ever, she did not pray. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. Okay, as I told you, for the first time in her life, she did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. Now see, at this age most probably people may have some intuitions, they come to know. Yes, so grandmother also knew that it was not only a fever, her time has come. Yes, and most probably she had seen her grandson after 5 years, and she was quite very happy with that. But at the very last moment she was not ready to talk to anyone, and she wanted to be busy praying. Although the parents tried to communicate, parents of the author tried to communicate with her, but she did not speak to anyone. We protested, but she ignored our protests. Okay, she was peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. Now you can see this. Okay, very peacefully she spent her life very peacefully without any dispute to anyone. Okay, throughout the life, spinning the wheel, feeding the sparrows, praying. Yes, just once in her life she omitted to pray. Yes, and at the very last moment peacefully she died. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. Now you can see again the pen picture, the beautiful description. Yes, it is the time of the evening, the golden sun rays falling on the body, a redness spread all over, red shroud was put on her. Yes, nature also was bidding a golden goodbye to her. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay, dead and stiff, wrapped in red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. Can you see? We say that animals cannot understand, but she was dead. The birds came, thousands in numbers. They were sitting without making any noise, no chirrups, no sound. Yes, and that was quite very clear that they were paying their tribute, their homage to their loved one. That was a manner in which most probably the nature was also bidding adieu to her. We felt sorry for the birds, and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. Now see, this is a very emotional statement. This makes it quite very clear that the birds did not come there only for the breadcrumbs, but also for the love. Okay, and that is why most probably on the very last moment they were so emotional, yes, that they did not eat the breadcrumbs. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Now, as I told you all, okay, the affection she had created with the birds has been brought up here. Now, by this we come to the end of the chapter. As I told you, my dear children, okay, the very first chapter here speaks about grandmother, grandparents, aged people. Okay, we should be caring and concerned towards them. Okay, we should definitely find some time to spend with them. Okay, because in the old age they should not feel lonely, they should not feel alone. Okay, the bond with the author had with his grandmother, each and every child, okay, should definitely have with their grandparents. Thank you.